Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first live of today. There's going to be a couple today. If you're watching this back on replay, there may have been millions of live broadcasts that you could have watched, but you've chosen to watch this one. So thank you so much. I'm joined in the studio here today by Jacqui Turner, who I will allow to introduce herself and her floral background. Jacqui.
I'm glad you're loving the floral background. I get so many comments while I'm on Zoom meetings.
It's a beautiful thing. Jacqui, for those who don't know who you are, a quick synopsis.
To start with, I'm a Welsh lass, which you might pick up on the Welsh accent. So let's get that out of the way straight away. But I live in Malvern in Worcestershire, so I've got the Malvern Hills just behind me. But I've been running my business, Turner Corner Learning Solutions, for just over 9 years now. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
Absolutely does. Now, we've entitled this today, Oi, You! This conversation could get difficult. People think in 2026 that we're really great at communication and conversation, but I can tell you as a communications expert, we're not. In fact, I think we're actually getting worse at it. And that's something that we're going to explore a little bit here. I'm going to start with a little bit of an example from yesterday. Now, I've been going through the rigors, shall we say, recently. We had a car accident at the beginning of January, and we're still trying to sort things out. Yesterday, I had to get in my car, the hire car that I got, and hurry over to Taunton to retrieve some keys, etc., which had been left in our wreckage of a car. And the reason I did this was because of poor communication, right? Because I phoned the garage, who shall remain nameless, and I said, oh, I believe my wife's got some work keys that are still in the front of the car. Could you possibly go and check? And a nice young lady did actually then go and check, and she said, yes, they're there. I then rang back to say, okay, would it be possible for us to pick those up tomorrow? Because I was going to be going to Taunton today anyway, later on, to drop my wife to the station. And that would have made complete sense. But I got a young lad who then went, well, what are you talking about? I said, keys in the car. I said, there's some keys in the car, and could I possibly get them out? He said, oh, well, the salvage people have already been contacted. You need to get your stuff out of the car as quickly as possible because we don't know when the salvage people are going to turn up. All right. Okay, I'm assuming that my insurance company need to give permission for that, and I need to have a conversation first before that happens. But he wasn't giving any of that. And so I said to him nicely, I said, could you possibly then do me a favor? Could you possibly go into the car, collect the keys, and then keep them in your workshop for safekeeping? He went, I'll see what I can do.
Oh, good grief.
Now, at the point someone says, see what I can do, right? That to me means I can't be bothered. And so
it's not my job.
Oh, it's not my job. So now I'm worried. And so I'm thinking, right, I've got to get in the car. I've got to get over there. I've got to get this stuff out of the car, right, before anything happens. Whilst I'm on the way over there, I speak to the insurance. They say, no, nothing's going to happen with that car until we give the go ahead or whatever. I said, right, well, but I'm already on the way there now, so I might as well go and pick this stuff up. But I said, this is what's happened. And do you know what they said? They said, well, you have to take that up with the garage. Right? Because it's not their problem, right? Even though I'm a client. And then when I get there, I speak to the nice young girl that I originally spoke to, and I said, I heard your conversation with and this is a bit of a breach, but I heard your conversation with the insurance people on the phone, and I heard you saying, well, it's not, I don't know what's happened, it's not our fault. And I said, right, I'm going to say it is actually your fault, because this is the conversation I had with the young lad. And she had immediately then went, oh my word, I'm really sorry about that. Okay, well, he's new. and so I launched into, I understand that, but if someone's new in your company, they need to be trained, right?
Absolutely.
And they need to understand customer service, and they need to understand communication, and they need to understand where communication could break down if they say the wrong thing. She said, yeah, okay, I totally take that on board, etc. And to me, there were so many people that were in the wrong there, right? The insurance people were in the wrong, because actually the insurance people should care, right? They should care that actually somebody that they are using as part of their service isn't performing customer service wise, right? Because what people don't understand is it reflects back on them.
Of course it does.
That young lad should care, but ultimately maybe he's the least one to blame, right? His conversation was to blame, but who wasn't training him properly to have those conversations in the first place? They're to blame.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And actually that young lady's to blame, nice as she was, because actually when she starts going, well, it's not our fault, without looking into it, that's another part of customer service gone wrong. I bring that up as a starting point, Jacqui, just to let you maybe unpick some of that, because isn't this where it all goes wrong?
I mean, firstly, having worked in insurance for first 20 years of my career, it really frustrates me to hear examples like this, because firstly, anybody working in an insurance organization, should be able to put themselves in the customer's shoes, in terms of, that's where it all starts, doesn't it? It's being able to understand, if I was that customer, what would I need and want?
Yep.
And that should always be a starting place, and, that should lead into then helpful conversations, what I can do to help, and recognizing from a customer's point of view, who cares who's to blame? I'm just speaking to somebody that should be taking ownership, should be looking to see what they can do to help. And if it is somebody else at fault, customer doesn't need to know that. That can be a conversation had internally within the organization in terms of feedback. But again, in my own experience, working with lots of different sectors, how people internally give each other feedback isn't always done in the right way. Hence why sometimes when it's delivered in the wrong way, that person on the receiving end just goes, who do you think you're speaking to? I'm not to blame, gets defensive. And so, yes, it's the customer conversation that should be, as I say, understanding, empathetic, focusing on what you can do, all the stuff that I talk about when I'm delivering customer service training, but also mistakes will keep happening if internally people are not having, i.e. team members, colleagues, departments, are not having those difficult conversations in the right way when things do go wrong. So the person that potentially, we all make mistakes, let's face it, we're human beings, but we don't. I'm a great believer, Graham, that the majority of people don't go to work to deliberately do a bad job. Often we do things in the spur of the moment. We might be busy, we might be rushing, but we don't necessarily know the impact we've had on somebody else within the organization unless that person respects us enough to have the conversation and to give us the feedback. I mean, hopefully you agree in terms of the majority of people don't want to deliver a bad job, but as you've said, it starts with training, doesn't it?
It does, and good training as well. And if Marianne Mills was here, one of the things she would say is half the problem is that the trainers aren't trained, and she's right in that ultimately, if you're not training people to deliver training, well, then you're going to, you get accidental managers, but you get accidental trainers as well. You get people that are appointed trainers within an organization. I was just coming off of a call with someone that's in software, and having come from the software world myself, one of the things we often saw in software was that when it came to then training clients, it often got left down to either salespeople to do the training, or it was actual software developers to do the training. Now, and this is not a slight on software developers, but a lot of software developers spend an awful lot of time on their own, right? And don't necessarily have great people skills. And yet then when you go and ask them to do training with other people, which requires a lot of empathy, emotional intelligence, understanding of difference, etc., they will struggle with that. Even salespeople may give it all of the speak and the bravado and whatever, but they possibly will forget the fundamentals of the actual training, right? So quite often it's the wrong people are delivering training, the wrong people are disseminating that. And I'm going to use another one of my favorite words now, and so we can unpick that, which is assumptions. I think one of the biggest problems in modern communication is we assume, right? And I think it's getting worse because of delivery methods as well, because various delivery methods allow us to get things off of our chest or off of our desk very easily without actually needing to then worry about it. So if we send somebody an email or we send somebody a text, we got, oh, I've done that now, right? And we immediately make an assumption, which is that that has been received and understood by the person at the other end in the same way that we understood it. It also, we have the assumption there that actually, because we've done that bit, we've now done our job, and that actually that person's now left comforted and able to respond to this. The answer to that is no, most of the time they haven't. We haven't actually checked in with that person to see, did they understand that information? It's quite funny, actually. One of the things that one of the insurance companies have said to me at the end of every call, and I think it's quite funny because it's a bit of a throwaway line, is, and I just have to ask you now, have you understood everything we talked about today? Right now, I can understand where that's coming from a customer service point of view. But ultimately, what I would say to them is, are you actually within that call, are you confident that that person has understood everything that you've said to them today? Right? Yes, put that in a little line at the end. But the reality is you need to be making sure that you're as confident as possible that that person has understood. So I just feel like there's these huge assumptions, and I feel even with things like that, we're just ticking boxes rather than actually doing the job properly.
I completely agree with you. I think partly, in terms of that assumption piece, it starts with choosing the right channel to communicate with. So, if you're, for example, I had a client recently that asked me to deliver difficult conversation training for their team leaders. So I said, explain to me tell me what is going on in the organization between those team leaders that's driving you to have this conversation with me that says, that they have a training need. And this particular manager said, well, because they're sending emails to their team when there's a performance issue and telling them, what they've heard on a call and telling them what they should do differently. And they're having that conversation via email. Well, firstly, if somebody's doing something that you want them to improve, is email the right form of communication? I think sometimes people hide behind email communication because it's easy, isn't it? I haven't got to face that person right now. As you quite rightly said, Graham, I can tap on my keyboard, I can press send, there we go, job's done, I can move on, and hope that that person on the receiving end has understood, interpreted, because we all know that we don't interpret things in the same way, has interpreted that message in the right way, rather than potentially thinking, yeah, this might be a difficult conversation, or that I need to have, but I need to have that conversation face to face. And in a phone conversation with a customer, you're absolutely right. It's about checking in with that customer throughout that conversation, asking open questions, asking the right questions to help that person or to certainly check that that person is understood. And when, you know, I'm not going to go in this in a big way, but when you've got vulnerable customers, that's even more important to do that checking-in piece. Just asking a question at the end of a conversation and hoping that there's a yes at the end of it simply isn't enough to really be confident as a customer service advisor that I've delivered that message in a way that that customer's understood. But it does often, I think, start with choosing the right method of communication. It also, I guess, starts with recognizing the fact that our brains are very, very busy. We make assumptions and judgments all of the time, whether we admit to it or not. So when we see something happen in the workplace, our brain is already making some judgments about what could be going on there. You know, and I think a big part of having any conversation is recognizing when our brain is in that mode of potentially making an assumption and not going into that conversation with that assumption already, you know, already there in our mind.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a good part of kind of communication training is to start with the idea in your head that every time you communicate with someone, you are probably putting assumptions out there, right? So if you think that in the first place and you look for those assumptions, you soon realize probably how biased your way of saying something or putting something over is, and where it's weighted in a particular way, and so it may be misunderstood, right? Because if there's any potential for it to be misunderstood, there will be an opportunity with somebody that will be misunderstood. I mean, one of the things you were saying in the middle of that, I spent 15 odd years dealing with breakdowns in communication. Basically, when I was doing workplace assessments, a lot of my time was dealing with people where they'd already crashed and burned because it, you know, it had they'd been affected, right, by something organizationally. And you know, I can talk through examples of people with dyslexia, for example, who have had tasks sent to them by managers, right, in email, right, and then they're there for an extra 2 hours beyond their colleagues of an evening trying to sort their tasks out because they've got to find them in amongst this sea of words which they struggle with anyway, right? When the manager could have literally sent them that as a task rather than in an email, right? So
Yes.
I feel like we just don't understand. One of the things we never do in communication in the first place as well, which is a very strong point here, is do we ask before we even start communicating with someone, how do you find communication? Which communication methods do you find best, right? Is it okay if I send you emails, or do you struggle with emails and they just get lost in an endless pile? You'll see the posts on LinkedIn. Oh, I've got 50,000 emails in my inbox. You send that person an email, they've got 50,001, right? It's not going to be found. You know, is text helpful? Is a range of communication methods helpful to somebody? But starting by having that conversation is incredibly helpful. Again, conversation I had this morning with someone, they use Teams. I don't use Teams. And I'm going to say this to anybody that's out there who uses Teams. One thing you need to know is that because Teams is not agnostic, right, because it's made by Microsoft, is that sometimes when you send your team invite for a meeting outside of your organization to somebody on the outside, and if they've got, like I do, a Mac or whatever, they get an email, but it doesn't land anywhere. It doesn't go into any calendar or anything like that. So you might think you've organized this and this is the best system in the world because internally it works for you. When you take things outside of an organization, sometimes it's different. Sometimes people outside of your organization use different things, work with different things. You know, you can't always assume somebody's got a PDF writer. You can't always assume somebody's got Word. You can't always assume that somebody's got this bit of equipment or whatever that they're going to be able to use to communicate back with you, right? You have to start with the basics, which are, I'm looking to communicate with you now. I'm going to be sending you this. Are you able to take that? Are you able to receive that? It's really good. Oh, by the way, we're talking about great communication. Looks like we've reached India this morning, which is fantastic. Thank you to
brilliant.
Thank you to Abdul, the nation first, who's giving us lots of nice comments to the side of us on the screen. From Pune, I don't know whether I've pronounced that right. Abdul, you have to let me know. Is it Pune in India? How's your Indian geography, Jacqui?
Absolutely appalling.
Okay,
my apologies to Abdul, but I do like his point where he says understanding the real problem solves half the problem.
It really does. It really does. So you've got coming up a little event. It's and you're going to be doing these on a fairly regular basis as well. So if people are going to miss the next one, they can at least get in touch with you and find out when the one after that is. What's this event all about? What does it do for people?
Well, I like to do a lot of market research. So I put out polls regularly on LinkedIn, etc. And overwhelmingly, when I put out polls around what do their team leaders struggled with the most, difficult conversations always rises above all the others. So for me, because I'm passionate about helping team leaders, who lack that confidence, I know what it's like. You will know what it's like as well, Graham. We all have moments where we're lacking a bit of confidence in whatever context and situation, and how that can make us feel. And because our subconscious wants to protect us, the more anxious we are about something, the more we tell ourselves that's going to be difficult. We're not going to jump straight into it, are we? We're going to try and delay that inevitable as much as we can. And I don't want any team leaders to feel like that. So what I've decided to do this year on a monthly basis, without any cost or investment to any businesses whatsoever, is to put this right. So it goes back to everything you've said up to this point, Graham, about the art of communication. It's about not making assumptions. It's about removing that word difficult because of the mind talk that goes on before we even have that conversation and the negative impact it can have when we're in that conversation in terms of our own body language, the words that we speak with. So every month I've decided to put on a 2-hour free session that will focus on helping team leaders to develop the art of communication, to have those difficult conversations in the right way. And it does start with, as I say, getting rid of any assumptions, which is really difficult to do when you're in a working environment and you can see certain behaviors, you can hear the words that people are saying, not to have those assumptions. But there are things that we can do before we go into that conversation to get rid of those assumptions, and also to have that, what I would call a curious conversation, a clarity conversation, an honest conversation, a growth conversation. There's lots of alternatives that we can label that conversation, or just simply a conversation, if that works for you, in terms of having that conversation in the right way. And that's why I absolutely agree with what Abdul has said there. Understanding the real problem, going in there with that curious element to understand what might be going on here for that particular person. That's what I want to learn. That's what I want to understand, because until I understand it from their perspective, how can I best support that person? So it's about having those conversations in the right way. Yes, I've got a session tomorrow, 2 till 4. There are still a couple of free places left available, but I will.
There you go, Abdul. Get on that. You enjoyed that, honestly. By the way, yes, we got the name of the place right, Pune. So yeah, tomorrow afternoon. Well, depending on when you watch this, of course.
Wednesday the 21st.
On Wednesday the 21st. At what time?
It's 2 till 4 p.m. It's via Zoom because I hate Teams.
There you go.
Sorry, everybody that uses Teams, but I couldn't agree with you more. Graham, as an external person, is a nightmare.
That's a little bit of bias from us, and of course we're prepared to learn. And and I'm prepared to talk to anyone at Microsoft about it if they want to jump on the call. No, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Just to clarify for anybody that's maybe interested in that, two things. One, who are we saying is a leader? Because that's a big term, and it might be that people think, this is not for me because I'm not a leader. Who are we actually putting into that category?
Interesting question. Anyone within an organization may need to have a conversation with another colleague and lead by example. So for me, that word leadership is very much about a mindset. It's about behavior. It's about how we lead by example. So I always welcome anybody that wants to develop the art of communication and handle those more supportive, clarity conversations in the right way. But certainly anybody that is managing, whether that's one person or 10 people, and in that first line manager role, that want to develop their skills and their confidence in that area.
Okay, so basically it could be anybody in an organization. If you're in charge, which is an awful term, but if you're in charge of somebody else, or you're responsible for another member of staff, etc., whether you're C-suite at the top, or middle management, or lower management, or literally you and Terry clean the bogs and you're in charge, right? Then
absolutely,
this is for you. Okay, so that takes care of that. And just a quickie to end then. What might be some of the sort of difficult conversations that people in the past that have come along have maybe sort of opened up about?
Well, I always start with, before the training course, anybody that comes on, then I send them an email and ask them to tell me what types of difficult conversations they're having. So I'm not just throwing out a generic course every month. I always tailor it. But I've got one lady that is struggling with and more, I don't want to be ageist here, but an older, let's choose my words carefully, an older team member who is struggling with the new systems in the business and it's affecting their performance. So that's one that she wants some help with. The one that I think always comes up, it doesn't happen regularly, but it does, I think, cause anxiety in the person that has to have the conversation, which is the body odor conversation. So that is one that needs to be handled with a whole level of sensitivity. So usually that one comes up in the session as well.
I've had to have that conversation before now with members of staff. It's incredibly difficult, and one of the things is that I find that can be sometimes very that bring in a lot of issues around sort of like cultural differences, or kind of very differences in terms of social economic things as well. So and the answer to that is not just buy soap and shampoo and whatever and leave it in their drawer at work. That is not the way to deal with it. Jacqui will go into that in more detail in the session, etc. Just a quick one there on the older person and software and tech. I think one of the things that really scares people, having been an assistive technology trainer for years as well, when they have to learn new technology, is that they think that they have to learn all of it at once, right? What I would say is really focus in on maybe helping that person with one or two things that they can do within that system, right? That are the fundamentals to begin with, and go through, let them repeat that as often as possible until that becomes habit, right? And don't try and then push on to the next bit quickly, but just allow those habits to become embedded, right?
Absolutely.
And you're just going to have to become patient, I'm afraid, because some people with software, and I don't think it's an ageist thing. I think some people get tech, some people don't get tech. But if you don't get tech,
absolutely,
then it's really, really difficult. Systems, skills, anxiety. Oh, Abdul, you're just mentioning such great words here. And he says as well, if you are helping someone, then you are a leader. That literally is great definition. If you are helping someone, you are a leader. So if you're out there and you are helping somebody, and that's got to be most of us, right? If you're helping somebody, you should sign up for Jacqui's session, which will be tomorrow.
I'm going to pinch that one, Abdul. I'm loving it.
It's good, isn't it? It's
really good.
We'll see you at tomorrow's session. If you don't make it, don't worry. There will be another one. So just get in touch with Jacqui and ask her when the next one is, and then book onto that. Okay.
Absolutely. I'm hanging around LinkedIn on a daily basis, so just send me a DM.
She is. She really is. Just a little plug towards the end. Jacqui is also part of a community that I've started. It's called A Better Way of Life. One of the things we do in there, because I love communication, is try and open up conversations. It's where we all learn. And later in the year as well, I'm going to be running some get-together events where we actually tackle big conversations together, because that's actually useful stuff. I've been to enough kind of business events over the years where everybody just slaps each other on the back and it becomes some kind of silo. It's what I've just written about on LinkedIn in the last day or so. I'm a bit fed up of that, and I think other people are too. It doesn't really get you anywhere. So I'm going to center our events around conversations that need to be had, and how different people with their different perspectives can actually add into those conversations. Will we come out with the answers? Probably not. Will we get closer to a truth? Probably yes. And that's all that we can ever do, is get closer to the truth, not ever find the ultimate truth, unless you believe in that as a spiritual thing, in which case then good. Thank you for watching, everybody, and thank you for being here, Jacqui.
Thank you ever so much, Graham. Always good to have a chat with you.
We will be putting the links for Jacqui's event so that you can sign up on this as it's gone out now. I shall also put a link, so if you want to come and join us in A Better Way of Life, take part in those conversations, please do. If you're a leader, come and join us in there and talk to Jacqui in there, in her private channel, about things that you're struggling with within leadership. It's there for you. Honestly, can't really give you any more, can we? Who knows? We will be back soon with more of these live things. But until then, from Jacqui and myself, have a good rest of the day. And thank you for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you, everybody.